Welcome to this C1 media screencast, where we're going to look at media representations of sexuality, age and disability. So we've already done a lot of work on media representations, looking at ethnicity, social class, gender, and this is the final part of this particular topic area. After gender and ethnicity, age is the most obvious category under which we file people. And there are a whole range of instant judgments and stereotypes which go along with that categorization. And whilst we've come to understand that stereotyping someone according to their gender or the colour of their skin is unfair and unacceptable, stereotyping according to age and discrimination on the basis of age, what we call ageism, is still widespread and is still reflected in media representations. In relation to media representations of youth, I think there are two competing and contradictory discourses. On the one hand, youthfulness is worshipped, particularly if we look at advertising, where we've got a youth-obsessed media that insists on worshipping beauty, which is associated with youth, and there seems to be an unspoken agreement amongst editors in print and online that we prefer to look at images of young, smooth-skinned models in connection with both advertising and editorial copy. But in addition to this worshipping of youthfulness, John Davis has argued that youth has also become a kind of screen onto which the social anxieties of adult generations have been periodically projected. And we did a lot of work on this in the screencast on media moral panics and youth culture. And media representations about age are also strongly gendered, so women seem to be particular victims when it comes to snap judgments about age and age-appropriate behaviours, appearance and attitude. For example, there tends to be much stronger media pressure on women to be obsessed with youth, beauty and appearance. Older people in their 60s and onwards are often largely invisible in the media, and remember we use this term symbolic annihilation in media sociology to describe the invisibility or underrepresentation of particular groups in the media. So they're either largely invisible in the media or they're presented in quite negative ways. And this word cloud shows some of the negative stereotypes that are attached to being older within the mass media. And research carried out by Coody and Fisk in America showed that television in the United States underrepresented the elderly. So they found that just 1.5% of the characters on mainstream American television were elderly, with most of them in minor roles. Another social group that has suffered from symbolic annihilation within the media are gays and lesbians. So traditionally, media representations of sexuality in Britain have been overwhelmingly heterosexual in character. And Gerbner argues that the media participate in the symbolic annihilation of gays and lesbians by negatively stereotyping them, by rarely portraying them realistically, or by not portraying them at all. So homosexuality has traditionally been treated by the media as being deviant and perverse. Women were stereotyped as butch lesbians, and gay men as effeminate and camp, or sometimes as macho camp. However, David Gauntlet argues that in recent years there's been growing acceptance and tolerance of a diversity of sexual orientations within society, and this is beginning to be reflected in media representations. And he notes that television drama is beginning to offer prime-time audiences the chance to get to know lesbian and gay characters in soap operas, in drama series and in sitcoms. for example, Captain Jack in the Torchwood series. And media companies have woken up to the fact that the gay and lesbian consumer market, the so-called pink pound, is large and affluent. So as the pluralist approach would suggest, they're now slowly beginning to respond to what the gay and lesbian audience wants by actively courting it through advertising campaigns and the provision of media products designed for this particular section of the audience. Okay, I'm going to end this screencast by briefly looking at media stereotypes of disability. And disability we can define as a physical or mental impairment which has a substantial and long-term adverse effect on a person's ability to carry out normal day-to-day activities. And one of the main problems with media representations of disability is only rarely do the media treat disability as a perfectly normal and incidental part of everyday life. And Barnes has argued that the majority of media representations of disability are extremely negative, consisting of disabling stereotypes which, in his words, medicalise, patronise, criminalise and dehumanise disabled people. So, for example, in magazines, the only images of the disabled that we tend to see are those in charity advertisements, and their disability is the main focus of the representation. So we're often being encouraged to pity the person represented or to give them support in another way. There are, of course, exceptions. If we look at this advert from Benetton, and then I particularly like this advert from Nordstorm, because we've got a boy here with Down syndrome who's being treated like any other boy or girl in clothing. Within Hollywood movies, disability is seen as a great storyline, one to inspire pity in audiences and Oscar nominations from your peers. Think, for example, of Tom Cruise, who played a disabled Vietnam War veteran in the film Born on the 4th of July, and he received an Oscar nomination for his performance in this particular film. And in these types of films, actors are applauded for their fine performances as though the representation of disability were a particular dangerous and skillful thing. However, whilst Tom Cruise is prepared to strap himself into a stunt wheelchair, genuinely disabled actors do not get major parts in Hollywood films very often. Once again, though, there are exceptions. There are more positive representations of disabled people within the acting business. For example, pictured on the screen at the moment is the comedian and actor Francesca Martinez, who suffers from cerebral palsy but sees no reason why she should not follow a career in showbiz. So she's a successful actress, an award-winning comedian, and she has several seasons of Grange Hill behind her. In the 1990s, Ross carried out a qualitative study of 384 disabled viewers' attitudes towards media representations of the disabled. And as you can see from this summary, what this study found was that disabled viewers were overwhelmingly critical of the way in which disabled characters featured on mainstream television. And many of the changes that disabled viewers and listeners would like to see take place in the media can be described as respect issues. So respecting the diversity of disability and portraying those varied experiences, respecting the views of disabled people and consulting with them to provide more authentic and credible portraits, respecting the abilities of disabled people and actively involving disabled media professionals in all aspects of programme production across all genres. And crucially, as we can see on the screen, what disabled audiences want is an acknowledgement of the fact that disability is a part of daily life, and for the media to reflect that reality, removing the insulting label of disabled and making it ordinary.